ทัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Blessings and good evening to everybody. This is the period of Katina ceremonies in many monasteries and places of residence around the world. It's a reminder that one of the basic requisites that Buddhist monks use is cloth. We don't have many clothes to wear, but we do have our robes, cloth robes, and our tradition is to take cloth and sew it and make robes, sew it, dye it, make it into robes. And in the old days, monks would wander around the countryside looking for scraps of cloth. Cloth was hard to come by. So the Buddha made an allowance for katina cloth to be offered at the end of the rains. One of the memories many monks have is of cutting, measuring, cutting, sewing, dyeing a robe made from white cloth, and then finding out that the dye didn't go into the fibers of the cloth evenly, so they end up with a blotchy or a stained robe. Because new cloth, when it comes from a factory, tends to have various products in it to preserve it while it's waiting to be sold, so like starch, sometimes even kind of flour, other products. And if you don't wash that out before you dye the robe, then it will absorb the dye unevenly and make a mess. Or sometimes, if the monk is careless with his newly sewn robe before it's dyed, he might leave it somewhere where it gets stained by grease or picks up some dirt, and then when it's dyed, again you get patches and blotches and blemishes. So the Buddha compared this to the human mind, and that in order to see the truth, fully understand the way things are, in order to free ourselves from suffering, we have to clean up the mind first, so it can clearly see the way things are and know where suffering comes from and what to do about it, how to end it. So he compared it to the cloth. You have to wash the cloth before the dye can be absorbed into it. Having said that, the monk's life is quite simple. We just have 3 main robes, and that simplicity in itself is very supportive for the training of the mind. You don't have to think a lot about your clothing, your attire. You know, we all have the same kind of robes, similar colour, so you don't get problems with a lot of thought about fashion, comparing this year's robe colour with last year's robe colour, or monks comparing and themselves with others to see who's got the most fashionable looking robe, the most beautiful colour, although it still can happen. Like anything in life, even if you reduce something down to the most simplest level, say like a Buddhist monk, we don't wear many clothes, we just have one robe, but that one robe can still become a basis for attachment. It can become a little bit too concerned about the way it looks, particularly the colour. So many monks have suffered by sewing up a nice set of robes, maybe to offer a teacher or another monk, and then dyeing it, and when they dye it, a mistake is made and they come out strange colour and they can't be used. Because in Thailand, we usually use jackfruit wood to make a dye, a natural dye that we then put into the cloth, the white cloth. Makes a kind of orangey brown colour. You can use the wood from other trees and you can use other products. Some people have even tried using tea and a few things. But jackfruit wood makes a very good orangey brown colour, and it also has an astringent property, so it helps you to clean the cloth as well as dye it. So in Thailand you'd regularly wash in hot dye made from the jackfruit tree wood, boiled up in water. But when you make a new robe that's white and then you dye it with that, because it's white, it only takes some of the dye, so you end up usually with a kind of yellowy colour. So when I was a new monk, with my first set of robes, they used to call me banana. So many new monks are called banana monks for a while, until their robe starts to age and gets darker. Some monks become infatuated with the darker colours. They see pictures of some of the great old meditation masters like Luang Por Man, who had very kind of dark, worn robes, and they like that look. So they mix in chemical dyes with the natural dye to try and get their robe darker. And that's sometimes where you get problems. They put in too much of the powder and they end up with a robe that's maroon or purple or red or even almost black or green, because chemical dye mixed with natural dye sometimes produces a volatile, unpredictable mixture. So even something as simple as having one robe can still be a little bit of suffering if you're attached and you get too concerned about colour and stuff. And that's the same with many things, isn't it? Our mind, when we're not clear, we start to attach to things, and that attachment is the basis for views and opinions to form. We cling to those views and opinions, what's right, what's wrong, what we like, what we don't like, and that's a basis for suffering. So every time we have a katina ceremony or a new robe is made, it's always a good reflection just to compare the robe to the mind and see how well you're doing the job of cleaning up your mind. In Buddhism, we have two main ways of developing the mind, cultivating the mind to do this job of cleaning it up. And one of them we call samatha bhavana, and the other is vipassana bhavana. In the West, we use the word meditation because it's a convenient word, but unfortunately there are many different meanings to the word meditation in people's minds. They don't always define it in the same way, and it's not a word that is easily translated into Pali, the language the Buddha used. So the monks tend to use the word bhavana, which means cultivation. You're cultivating your mind, and in order to bring yourself to the point where you actually can realize truth, see the truth of the nature of your mind, how it works, how suffering arises, how it can be ended, what we have to do that. We practice and cultivate the mind through bhavana. And these two kinds of bhavana, samatha bhavana, vipassana bhavana, are often a cause for some misunderstandings and attachments to rise in people's minds. You hear some people say, I do samatha, others say, I do vipassana. Some people say, don't do samatha, you'll get attached to the calm, the tranquility that you're developing through samatha. Others say, do vipassana so you can get insight, wisdom, let go of the defilements, the mental defilements and the wrong views and the attachments that cause you suffering. Don't waste time with samatha, you'll get attached to it, and so on. But Ajahn Chah used to remind us all the time that samatha and vipassana are two parts of the same thing. And even though we talk about these two aspects of bhavana, mental cultivation. It's the one mind that we're cultivating. And we cultivate these two qualities, calm and insight, together. And they support each other just like friends. And as the teaching goes, the deeper the experience of calm, stillness that comes from samatha, the easier it is to clearly know and see the way things are. So the Buddha would say things like, samahito bhikkhave bhikkhu yatabhutang pachanati. By cultivating samadhi, one clearly sees and knows the way things are. So the Buddha himself encouraged us to develop samatha, to develop states of calm or samadhi, in order that we can experience stillness of mind, states of calm, stillness, so that we can clearly see the nature of physical, mental phenomena, this body, this mind, and the way we're relating to the world, our life. So these two aspects of bhavana or meditation are supportive of each other, and sometimes we do tend to put more effort or emphasis and effort into the practice of samatha, particularly in the beginning of our meditation journey through life, because the main thing you're doing in samatha meditation is developing mindfulness, strength of mindfulness, developing energy, developing right effort, abandoning unwholesome, unskillful states of mind, cultivating skillful states of mind, and then developing strong, continuous mindfulness, sati. And it's from that practice of developing sati, using different meditation objects, that our mindfulness can become very continuous, and the result of that is the mind experiences much more calm, because it's learning to pay attention in the present moment using an object, something that it can focus on, an object of samatha meditation. So it's a bit like any kind of skill you learn in life. You want to get good at a musical instrument, you have to do the scales first. They used to force me to play the piano when I was a little kid, and you get really annoyed doing these scales all the time. But actually anyone who becomes good at an instrument, part of it is because they spend a lot of time training, doing scales. Or sport is the same, you do a lot of preparation in just very basic training in order to become an accomplished sportsman or woman. Meditation is the same. We have to do a lot of samatha practice, developing mindfulness on objects, and probably the most useful and most universally known one is using the breath, anapanasati, as a way to develop strength of mindfulness, states of calm, stillness. But there are many other meditation objects people use. So another one that the Buddha emphasized over and over again is the development of metta bhavana, cultivating the thought, the feeling of loving kindness. And one of the things samatha meditation is doing, calming you down, it's not just mentally calming you down, physically it's calming you down as well. Whether you're cultivating mindfulness as you sit or as you walk, it's bringing this sense of calm, steadiness of mind, firmness of mind, and we say it's balancing the emotions, because what throws us off very quickly in life is emotional reactions to different experiences we have. Things come up through our day, seeing things, hearing things, just remembering things. We have different emotional reactions to all the sense contact we have. Some pleasant sense contact tends to excite us, stimulate us, and it stimulates desire for more pleasure and the objects of pleasure. Unpleasant sense contact does the opposite. It throws us, makes us irritated, annoyed, angry, worried, afraid. So to help balance our emotions, the Buddha encouraged us to develop samatha bhavana, cultivate this skill at learning to pay attention to a meditation object and do it frequently, often. Do it a lot, because that's the way you get better at it, through practice. One of the results you find when you practice meditation, particularly samatha meditation regularly, is you're constantly going to this experience of calming the mind by focusing it on one single object. So ignoring other objects, letting go of other objects for that period of time as you develop your meditation on a single object. And it makes the mind not only calm, but we say very malleable, workable, ready for contemplation. Sometimes they compare it to like oil and water. So like when you develop states of calm through mindfulness practice on an object, such as the breath, as the distractions and the negative mind states and the distractions and the worries and concerns about different things drop away, the mind feels much more pleasant, the emotions are balanced, we feel calm, even quite happy and content. And there's this sense of separation between mind and its object. So mind and body, and mind and the object of the senses. Because normally we're reacting to everything that comes into our experience. As soon as you see something, hear something, think something, an image comes in your mind, or it's an external sense stimulus, we react straight away, and the mind starts taking up that object, and we don't see the mind itself, we just see that object and then what we think about it. We like it, we don't like it, and we tell ourselves stories and create stuff with our imagination based on all these objects. So we're missing the mind itself. But when you practice a lot of mindfulness, very simple mindfulness practices directed to the thought of goodwill, metta, or to the breath, for example, the mind develops this state of calm, stillness, and this sense of it's been lubricated. Mindfulness and the sense of relaxed awareness brings a sense of joy, piti and sukha, we say, a sense of joy. We actually enjoy the meditation. There's this sense of, it lubricates the mind, and that lubrication, just like oil, it makes a film that separates between the mind and its object, the more mindfulness we have. So you get that sense of, oh, now I understand a bit about what letting go means. We say when you do some breath meditation and you have been bothered by some worry or some anger or something previously, but now you're putting your attention and practicing putting your attention on the breath, for example, then you can see, I don't have to attach and hold on tightly to every thought, every feeling, every bit of sense stimuli that's coming my way. I can watch, but there's this sense of separation between the mind that knows and what is known, the object. So we say it's like oil and water. They can be together, but they're not quite mixed. There's a separation. And for anyone who's meditated, they might have experienced that in one way or another. They'll probably understand what I'm talking about. It gives you that wonderful sense of, I don't have to attach to everything that I experience. I can know things, but then let them go very easily, very quickly. So we experience letting go maybe for the first time as our mindfulness improves. And this, for most people, they find this a very rewarding and educational experience. It's something that maybe you've never experienced before. You're having a thought come up in your mind, but just knowing it and letting it go straight away so it doesn't bother you. It's very pleasant, and it gives you a lot of confidence. You feel good, partly because you can see you're more in control of your own mind than you were before, if only temporarily. And you can let go of negativity, all the different kinds of mental stress and suffering that we experience every day. You're learning how to let go of that better, understand it, and as you deepen your practice, you can also start reflecting on, well, where's it all coming from in the first place? Maybe the first part of our meditation is just learning how to accept ourselves, how we feel, what we're thinking, who we feel we are, all our ideals and thoughts. Accepting that, getting to know that. But as our meditation improves, the strength of our mindfulness improves and the states of calm become more firmly established, we can actually catch where is a thought coming from. Is there any deeper, more deeply rooted attachment in my mind that is stimulating these particular thought streams or emotional reactions to things? So meditation, bhavana, tends to grow like this. The calm feeds insight, and insight feeds back into the calm. Over and over again you'll experience that. And you experience more the sense of the mind that is lubricated, not grasping so tightly to things, feels more calm within itself. And this is very useful for us as humans, this ability to bring up mindfulness, pay attention in the present moment is so useful for us, but also it's quite a rare skill that many human beings are not being taught and don't know much about, especially if they're not Buddhist. It's not to say that Buddhism has the only teachings on meditation, but many people in the world just never come in contact with meditation teachings, so they're missing out on one very good way to learn about the human mind and bring it to calm, and then to bring more understanding up. Over the years I've seen the benefits that practicing mindfulness, particularly on a daily basis, brings to people, even if they only practice for short periods, just that learning how to turn one's attention inwards, pay attention to one's own mind, both bring the mind to calm down a bit, and then also to be able to reflect or contemplate on one's experience. This is such a valuable, useful thing. I remember when I was in Thailand, you'd see, because it's a Buddhist country, and some people, they learn how to practice mindfulness of breathing, so even from when they were at school or kids, they may not be experts, but because they practiced it regularly, they have a familiarity with the practice. They have some faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, they've heard some of the teachings, they have some meditation experience. And you see how when things come up in their life, it's so valuable for them to be able to turn maybe to the practice of mindfulness of breathing at a time when they're afraid in a situation, or worried or nervous. There's so many situations in life that bring up worry, nerves, anxiety, but if you have a method of meditation, then you can turn to that at that time. Even very difficult situations, say like facing the possibility of one's own death, is probably one of the times when you really see the benefit of a lifetime's practice of meditation. And often, unfortunately, you see when people don't know how to train their mind, practice mindfulness, how much suffering they have at the end of their life, because they have a lot of fear, worry, and they don't know how to control their mind or put it onto anything skillful. And you don't have to be, a monk or a nun to have practiced this, but just somebody who's interested in training their own mind, understanding their own mind better, might have benefited in this way through their life. And don't even have to be that old. I remember one case, a doctor was telling us how this was in quite a rural, out-of-the-way part of Thailand, where things were a bit rough. And this doctor was newly qualified, working in a provincial hospital, so very inexperienced. And one night, they're doing night shift, maybe a Saturday night, this young man in his 20s was brought in full of bullet wounds, been in a shootout, and he's brought in and put on a bed. And the doctors had to make very quick decisions how to treat this man, because he was dying. He was full of wounds. And the reason he'd been shot was because his father was a drug dealer. He was not a drug dealer, but he looked like his father, and someone had been sent to kill his father, and they made a mistake and shot him instead because he looked very similar to his father. So this young man was dealing with the confusion of that, someone out of the blue shooting him, and then he went to the hospital and the bed was surrounded by his wife, who was scolding him, saying, "You've gone and got yourself shot now, and I'm 4 months pregnant, what are we going to do now?" So his wife was shouting at him and his other family members were crying. But this young man was quite wise, and he'd actually had a little bit of Buddhist practice in his life. And so first thing he said is, "I want to make my mind peaceful. I'm so injured here, I might not last. I want to make my mind peaceful and watch my breath. Can you all leave?" So he made the doctor get everyone out of the hospital room so he could have some peace and quiet at a very difficult moment in his life, the end of his life. The next thing, he said, my mouth is so parched, I really want some water. And the doctor said, "Well, I can't give you water because you've got so many bullet holes in you, your stomach is punctured, your intestines are punctured. If you take any water in, it's just going to go out of your stomach and infect your body, come into your body. It's not a wise thing to do. You have to wait till the operation is done. We're going to operate on you, and then maybe you can get a drip or get some water that way." And he just said, "I'm not going to make it to the operating theatre." He seemed to know more than the doctor. "I want my water now because I'm really parched, and you're a Buddhist like me, and if I die with the desire for water, a really strong desire, unfulfilled, I might be reborn as a hungry ghost, a preta. So please give me some water now." And the doctor was so shocked by what he said, she went and got him a little dipper full of water, and she and the nurse picked him up off the bed. So it sat him up, sitting either side of him, and they gave him the water, and she thought he'd just spill the water or choke on it. But she said he drank it very mindfully, one little sip at a time, because he was very parched. And he was just so mindful. He was mindful of his breathing, which was getting very difficult. He was mindful of drinking sip after sip of water, till he drank the whole lot. And she turned to put this dipper of water down on the table next to the bed, and when she turned back to the man, he was dead, he's gone. But she said it was very inspiring in a sense, because he was very mindful right to the end. He was watching his breath, he got everyone out who was confusing the issue, disturbing him. He had his drink, so he was satisfied, he had a sense of contentment, and then he died. That's the value of mindfulness, especially, you don't know when you're going to die. This young man was only in his early 20s. And over again you see through life, when people do practice mindfulness, they have something they can turn to at times of crisis. Maybe not literally at the time of death, that's one obvious crisis, but times when we have stress from work or family issues, all the kind of stressful things that can come up in life, you have something you can turn to, a way to calm your mind at a difficult time, calm your thoughts, help you to think straight, help you to control your body. And the Buddha always said, one who is mindful, continuously mindful of their body, whether it's the breath or the movement of the body or feelings in the body, unwholesome dhammas, we say Mara can't overwhelm them. Unwholesome dhammas can't take over their mind. And that brings me to mind another case. There was a young girl who came to stay in the monastery, again in Thailand, she was only 29 and she had kidney failure and was dying. So she came to stay in the monastery to practice bhavana, practice mindfulness, to keep her mind steady, calm, and she got very good results because she had nothing else to do with her life. She thought she was going to die because of kidney failure, so she meditated many hours a day, learned to become very calm with pain because she had a lot of pain. She had to do dialysis regularly, and she just used to a very good purpose the practice of mindfulness, of breathing. And then there was one time when she got so weak, her body looked very kind of ill. Even monks who had no medical knowledge we came in to chant for her, and we saw, oh, she looks like she's going to die. So they called an ambulance. The ambulance took a while, so we're chanting for her, meditating, and then we left the monastery to take her to hospital, thinking she's probably about to die, because the doctors had warned us she was very weak. It's the only time I've ever driven along the highway at 165 kilometers per hour, because the ambulance with the lights and the siren was whizzing off to the hospital because she was dying, and we were in a car behind. So it was very exciting. They even, at one point, the ambulance stopped on the highway, and one of the paramedics jumped out and came to the car full of monks and said, "We want the monks to come and sit on the ambulance because she's going to die, and we're worried if she dies on the ambulance with not a very good state of mind, then she may become a ghost haunting the ambulance, and we don't want that. So can you come on the ambulance and chant for her and meditate with her while she dies?" So the monks went on to the ambulance, and she was very smart. She got very weak, and her instruction had been to watch the breath, which she'd done to a point, but after a while she was so weak she couldn't focus on the breath or find the breath. So then she started chanting. So moved from her object of samatha meditation, you could say, was first the breath and then something a little bit coarser, easier to stay with. That was chanting, Pali chanting. So she was chanting as loud as she could, basically to keep herself awake, because she felt if she stopped chanting, drifted off, she'd just die. So she was literally chanting for her life. She was chanting to keep her awareness, keep her mindfulness going. And she managed to chant all the way to the hospital, so the paramedics were very grateful. She didn't die on the ambulance, and they rushed her into the emergency ward, and a team looked after her. And then after a while, they invited us in. They said, "There's nothing more we can do for her because her kidneys failed. She's preparing to die now, very weak, but she's still conscious. So before she's unconscious, just come and maybe say your goodbyes." So we went and we surrounded her, and she was practicing mindfulness of breathing. She said goodbye to her mother who was there, and her uncle, and the monks. It was a very solemn moment, and then she closed her eyes, and it was silent for a long time, and we all just meditated next to her. And after about, I don't know how long, 5 or 10 minutes, she opened her eyes, and she said, "I can't die." Obviously it hadn't reached her time, so whatever mindfulness practice she was doing worked on that day, and she stayed in hospital a long time, eventually went back to the monastery. Eventually she got a kidney transplant, so she didn't die and she actually got a transplant. That was another part of the story. But the important thing was that she really made use of the practice of mindfulness meditation, samatha meditation, first on chanting and then on mindfulness of breathing, and it really helped her at a terrible time where she had lots of pain and probably lots of fear, worries. And you can see it makes that sort of, as I said, this lubricating effect on the mind, where the mind can cope with pain, anxiety, without getting too attached to it. Of course, the second part of meditation is vipassana, bhavana, the development of insight, clear knowledge and vision of the way things are. So for someone in that state, someone very ill, well, but often you use the reflection on impermanence, because where do our fears come from? Well, we're afraid of separation from what we love and like, the people we love, the places, the things we love and like. Death means separation, so it brings up fear, anxiety. What's going to happen to those left behind? What's going to happen to me when I die, after I die? All those thoughts come up, but with the reflection on impermanence and seeing every thought arising and ceasing, if one is practicing that regularly with this basis of samatha, then the practice of vipassana tends to go quite well, because one can see a thought arising, passing away, feeling arising, passing away, and one becomes much more clear in recognizing, seeing anicca, impermanence, the changing nature of our mental activity and our physical body, and particularly feeling. Having developed samatha and developed this state of calm where one can reflect on one's experience quite well, if one turns to contemplate feeling, you'll notice how much we're just driven and a slave to feeling, running after pleasant feeling and running away from and rejecting painful feeling. Anyone who practices meditation, if you want to deepen your practice, will just keep working with feeling. So if you're sitting meditation and you can sit practicing mindfulness of breathing for 30 minutes, say, well, just try practicing for 1 hour and see what that brings up, because there'll probably be a moment that comes up where you have some pain in your leg and you say, I don't want to be with this pain, I'm going to stop, do something else. Rather than give in to that feeling and taking it as a sense of self and attaching to it and then making a certain mood or reaction towards it, maybe just practice watching it for once with your state of mindfulness and calm. Can I just carry on sitting still, observing, feeling? And part of the development of vipassana is questioning, investigating experience, not just observing it only, but also questioning. Is this permanent or impermanent? Where is it? If you have a feeling of pain, where is that feeling? Is it in the bone? Say it's in your leg. Is it in the bone of the leg? Is it in the muscle, tendons? Is it in the skin? Who owns that feeling? Questioning like this. And you can only do that if there's already a basis of mindful awareness that you've developed through your samatha. You've got that strength of mind and the state of calm that then you can carry out your investigation in this kind of envelope of serenity, tranquility. And this is how many of the forest masters, monks and nuns have practiced over the years, developing this skill at investigating feeling, pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, questioning it, asking, is it permanent, not permanent? Is it dukkha? Is it subject to change and degeneration? Or is it a source of happiness? Is it a self? Is it a me, mine, myself? Is it a person or being? Or is it a phenomena that arises through causes and conditions and then passes away? These are the kind of insights that liberate the mind little by little from some of its habitual attachment, the clinging to views, opinions about things, the view of self. Every little thing that I experience is me, mine, myself. So every pleasant feeling I love, I like, I get elated by, cling on to, want more of. Every unpleasant feeling I hate, want to get rid of. Our life seems to be constantly swinging between love and hate, because anything you attach to will be a basis for love and hate. But if you develop more mindful awareness and keep the mind in this place of balance in the middle, then you can contemplate these things, investigate, see a feeling as just a feeling. Even a painful feeling is just a feeling. The body, the physical body, is just the body. Memories are just memories. Thoughts are just thoughts. It's easy to say, but the only way we can really understand this is practice. Develop that ability to maintain mindfulness from moment to moment. You develop it through the practice of sitting, walking, meditation, then training yourself in contemplation. If we don't do this, then what tends to happen is we might develop some peace and calm through samatha, which is good, but then we often will just become complacent or even dull. If we don't train in investigation, samadhi, the Buddha said, has to be balanced by virya, effort. And the effort has to be to seek out the source of suffering and abandon it. But sometimes we take the happiness we've achieved in our meditation, so we've got some calm, some bliss, some good feelings, and then we say, this is good enough. I don't want to put more effort in. We can become lazy very easily, even though we've already achieved something in our practice. There's more we have to do, but we can get lazy. You see this when you practice meditation, maybe on a retreat, or if you're in the monastery. What did the Buddha say? A basis for laziness is, the thought, oh, I've got some work to do today. I can't meditate anymore because I've got to go and do some work, and I might get tired, so I better leave some energy to do that work. Or maybe after some work, you say, oh, I've done some work, I'm a bit tired, I'm not going to meditate now. This is the basis for laziness. Or, oh, I'm feeling a little bit ill today, I've got a few aches and pains, or I've got a slight headache. I won't meditate because I'm a little bit ill and I might overdo it. Or it may be food. As a monk, you don't choose your food, you get alms food. So most days we have far too much food and it's all very nice food. But still, there may be one day that you get slightly less food, or food that's not quite to your liking, not what you're used to. Again, it can be an excuse. Kind of say, oh, well, I've done some meditation yesterday. Today I don't think I can because I didn't eat enough, or it wasn't quite right. Our mind loves to throw up excuses, and it gets a bit complacent, or we just go dull. The other one is journey, isn't it? Going on a journey. Say, oh, I've got to travel today, I can't meditate. I remember when we were in Singapore, and Lumpur Plian was saying, the first time he went to teach Dhamma in Singapore, many, many years ago, and his teacher was Lumpur Wan, who was one of the foremost meditation masters in the forest tradition. And Lumpur Plian himself is a great teacher. He went to Singapore and he's staying in the Thai temple, Wat Anand, and he had a tiny little room, and he'd been teaching all day and then into the night. It was about 1 a.m. he finally got back to his room. So he was feeling tired. It's always hot. Unfortunately, in those days, there's no air conditioning, no fans, so it was very hot and sweaty. All he wanted to do was lie down and rest, exhausted. So he's just lying down thinking, oh, I've worked a lot today. I've traveled here from Thailand and I taught all day, and the food isn't my usual food. All the usual excuses came up, he said. So he was lying down, and then suddenly he had this vision of his teacher, Lumpur Wan, standing next to him, and Lumpur Wan just said, what kind of a monk are you? Lazy monk, lying there. You should get up and meditate. And out of fear and respect and love for his teacher, he jumped up and he said he had to meditate all the way through till morning. He didn't dare rest. And that's the value of a teacher. But the teacher isn't always there, so we also have to learn how to overcome these excuses. You get just nice, peaceful state in your meditation, and you think, oh, this is good enough. Now I'm going to sleep, or now I'll go and talk to my friend. Or sometimes even you get quite peaceful in your meditation, you finish, you go away, and then you get overwhelmed by greed or anger. It's all possible. So the Buddha said, don't start making excuses at that point. You have to investigate the Dhamma. See where you're attaching, see where you're clinging, and keep practicing. Maintain your mindfulness and investigate. This is the only way we can, inch by inch, centimetre by centimetre, if you're metric, crawl up towards Nibbana. It's not easy, but we have to keep doing it little by little, and don't worry about how long it will take, how far, how long it will be, will it be this life or next, this year or next. Don't worry about that, you just keep practicing and don't give in to those excuses. So meditation is like this word meditation, it really is bhavana, learning to cultivate this mind, train the mind, develop it in skillful qualities, abandon the unskillful qualities, and particularly develop samatha and vipassana, the states of calm and then insight. And they're just in the one mind, so you don't have to sort of do one and think you're missing out on the other somehow. They develop together. The Buddha said there's no jhana without panya. There's no state of calm and samadhi without wisdom. They develop together. Wisdom supports samadhi, samadhi supports wisdom. Or as Lumpur Cha used to say when people ask, when should I contemplate or when should I practice samadhi? He said, well, when you're peaceful enough to contemplate, contemplate. You have to know that for yourself. Am I peaceful enough to contemplate? Meaning, if your contemplation can take place and you're not too distracted and you're not giving in to your different desires and attachments, then you can contemplate. It's good enough. And do it. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight. If there's been anything useful for you, we'll take it away. Hope it's helpful to you in your practice, and see you next time.